We're officially a few days into fall camp in Aggie land. And folks, a few guys have been jogging out with the ones that I don't think many were expecting.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to us by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. Folks, we can sit here and we can run through and talk about who's going to start, what's going to happen. At the end of the day, there's going to be some guys checking in with the ones that we don't always expect. Noah Thomas is the first guy. Now, he's the one that I think you could argue was seen more as a starter. I didn't, and I'm going to explain why. One thing I'm very candid about, when I'm wrong about something, if I predict something and I end up being wrong, I'm going to be the first one to tell you I think I was wrong on this. The way I kind of have this has gone so far in fall camp has been Noah Thomas at the Y, Evan Stewart at the X, and then Anias and Moose kind of flipping back and forth at the slot, but Anias kind of being more the guy. Folks, this is the way I saw this. I know Moose is a slot guy. I know that's what he's good at. He's a slot receiver. But I think he has these skills. So let me preface before I get into that. I'm a big believer in get your best guys on the football field at all time. That's why we talked about a quote from Coach Petrino yesterday, FTS, feed the studs. I thought that the Aggies' three best receivers were Evan Stewart, Moose Muhammad, and Anias Smith. Folks, that might still be true, but the Noah Thomas hype is building and building quickly. I mean, it is swirling like a tornado, the Noah Thomas hype, folks. And I am on board. What I kind of foresaw happening was Moose maybe sliding out as more of an outside guy this year so you could have your three best receivers on the field. I had a feeling that's kind of what they were going to do. And listen, I mean, I think I've seen depth charts for a few months now that had the same thing. Noah Thomas the Y, Evan Stewart the X, and then Anias and Moose flipping off the back and flipping back and forth at the slot position. But folks, I just thought they were going to throw in Moose. They were going to get him on the field. Now, listen, even if Noah Thomas and Evan Stewart are the guys at your outside receiver positions, you're going to still see both Anias Smith and Moose Muhammad. You're going to see everybody the whole time. I mean, you're going to see all these guys floating in and out. It's not like if Noah Thomas is a starter, you're never going to see these guys. You're going to see all four of these guys a handsome amount. So I got to be honest, folks, I'm a little surprised. I thought you would see that happen. Now, I get it. I mean, and here's the deal. I don't like having to play someone out of position. I like that you're going to be able to leave Moose as a slot guy. I mean, if you have a four-receiver set, you get to have all your studs on the field. I'm cool with all of this. All I'm kind of getting at here is I thought that you wanted, like I said, to have your best guys on the field, and I thought your best guys were those three, not including Thomas. It's starting to seem like Thomas is one of the studs that you got to feed. And I don't think that's a bad thing, folks. I mean, people have been we heard from Bryce Anderson yesterday. He spoke to the media, and what was one of the things he talked about? Who's the toughest to guard? Noah Thomas and Evan Stewart. I think hearing that from the guys going up again, it's like, I like to give baseball stuff with my baseball background, but like I like hearing the MLB hitters say, well, who's the toughest to hit? It's like, well, Kershaw's curveball gets to me. I like hearing that inside information. Hearing Bryce Anderson say, Noah Thomas is tough to guard, that says something to me because Bryce Anderson is a dang good defensive back, a dang good corner. And if he's having issues locking down Noah Thomas, I think that means he's in for a big year, folks. And I've talked about if I had to bet on a breakout player, I listed some names and a few times throughout the show and throughout doing the show over the last few months. And Noah Thomas has always been a guy that I could see breaking out this year. But I wasn't totally sure if it was going to be him or not. So, folks, I mean, I think, like I said, the Noah Thomas hype is legitimate, for real. I'm all in on this Noah Thomas hype, folks. I think it's going to be great. I've talked about how I'm a big fan of a 6'6" receiver. I like what they can do, especially when you mix in speed. I also like, on one episode a few months ago, we ran through the numbers of his PFF grades last year. He is not afraid to run block. And I love that, because at the end of the day, does it matter a ton? Not really. I mean, it's not crazy often that you see an outside receiver, a corner crash and make an attack. I mean, it happens. It helps. I'm not saying you shouldn't ever block the outside corners, but he takes pride in his blocking. And that speaks to me, folks. Taking pride in blocking speaks numbers to me, folks. And I respect that about him. So Noah Thomas is going to be a guy. And I think that of these unexpected starters we're going to run through, I would say he's not the most unexpected, but I think he has the most hype around him, and he's the most fun name to talk about. So, folks, I think he was a little bit unexpected to me. I don't know if it was unexpected to many others, but Noah Thomas is here to stay, folks, and I think he's going to be a massive threat for the Aggies in 2023. So the next name we're going to talk about, I want to save. There is one unexpected starter that I was really shocked to hear. I want to talk a lot more about that, so we're going to save that for segment 2, so stick around for that. But a little bit, to just kind of get us a couple minutes here, I put this as a 4th unexpected starter, and this guy, he hasn't been working with the ones a ton, a little bit, but Reuben Owens, folks, and I can't go through an episode of Locked On Aggies without saying his name, but he is turning heads. That is what I was hoping from him throughout fall camp, was that he would turn heads. He has ground to make up on Amari Daniels and Le'Veon Moss, just because he is the true freshman. He's the rookie. He hasn't been here as long. Those guys have been here before. They've played college football before. Reuben Owens is the young gun. He's the rookie. He's the new guy. He has to get out here and prove himself, folks. And hearing that he's turning heads, that is exciting to me, because I mean, the hype isn't quite Noah Thomas hype level, but I think the Reuben Owens hype train is going to need some more coal soon, because that thing's going to have to keep going. I am all in on the Reuben Owens hype train. I think that I don't know, does he take over the starting spot at running back? I think so, folks. I'm really starting to think that when it's all said and done, when all of this is said and done, maybe a game or two into the season, I think by Auburn game, the Auburn matchup, I think you're going to see Reuben Owens as the starting running back for the Aggies. That's my bold take. I don't know how bold it is, and the funny thing about it, that's no knock to Amari Daniels and Le'Veon Moss. They're great running backs that are going to help this team. That's the other thing we've been hearing throughout fall camp so far, is people raving on this running back room as a unit. All of them are great. Even like a name like David Bailey's been good. So, folks, I'm not knocking those guys by any means, in any way. I'm not knocking those 2 running backs. I'm simply saying, because I think they're great and they're going to help this team. All I am saying is that I think Reuben Owens is going to take over, and I think he is going to be an absolute menace for the Aggies this season, next season, and hopefully for years and years to come after that. I'm really excited to see him run the rock in a Texas A&M uniform. Folks, like I said, I have 2 more unexpected position kind of battles, unexpected starters that we're going to run through, one of which is really surprising and really exciting. We're going to get into that at the start of segment 2, coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I want to tell you about our wonderful friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Folks, I say it, I love LinkedIn. I love what they do. They make finding jobs easier for people job seeking. They find candidates easier for employers looking to hire. It's a win-win. It's free. You can look at resumes. You can look at where people went to school. You can look at all of these different things. It is an all-in-all outstanding service. I love LinkedIn. I've had friends use it to get jobs. My parents use it. I use it. It's a great service. and everybody needs to go check it out. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. So, folks, the next one, we're going to get right into it, folks. The cornerback room. I felt very, very confident that it was going to be Tariq Chappelle and Tony Grimes. Tariq Chappelle, it sounds like he's locked in as a guy. Tony Grimes, we've seen two guys, and what's funny about it is the guys that we've seen mixing in with the ones. I was high on Sam McCall, and I still am. And the other thing I need to preface before I say these two names, Tony Grimes and Sam McCall, we've heard nothing negative about them. Nothing negative, nothing bad whatsoever. I think we've just seen two guys kind of really step it up and step into a role that we didn't really expect. And those names are the Boston College transfer, Josh DeBerry, and true freshman, Jayden Thomas. Jayden Thomas was, of course, the 156th player nationally. So he's a true freshman in last year's class. And the interesting thing about Jayden Thomas, his friend, Noah Thomas, spoke out and said, who's been impressing you much in the secondary? And Noah Thomas is quick to say Jayden Thomas. Now, folks, my belief on that, I think there is an amount of respect that comes with there's an amount of respect that comes with shouting somebody out. It's like we talked about yesterday, Max Johnson talking about Connor Wigman. We talked about, when players or coaches shout out other players, shout out coaches, that always to me resonates. I think that is a big deal. So hearing Noah Thomas talk about how great Jayden Thomas has looked so far, that says a lot, folks. It really does. And he's competing with the ones right now. I mean, goodness gracious. So who's going to start there? Is it going to be the Boston College transfer, the guy who's been there, done that, and Josh DeBerry? Is it going to be Jayden Thomas? Is Grimes or McCall going to kind of fight back into this battle? This one, the wide receiver room, like I said, I had expected to the feed your studs stuff, like I said. So I wouldn't say I was crazy surprised to hear that the Noah Thomas breakout is fully here. So I was a little that much surprised. This, I was like that. I mean, it was when I figured this out, I was like, wow, I really was shocked by that. But at the end of the day, get your talented guys out there. I don't hate it. One thing I always say is this. I think as fans, we are often quick to kind of go, what the heck? Why would you not play Tony Grimes? Why are you playing a true freshman? What I've learned over the years growing up and getting older and learning more about athletics and sports and football is that I think we got to trust these coaches. I mean, there is a reason that Jayden Thomas and Josh DeBerry surprised me a little bit less. I mean, a talented guy from Boston College, played a lot of college football. He knows what's going on. The Jayden Thomas surprised me a little bit just because he's a true freshman. But at the end of the day, if he's out there, it's not a joke. He's out there for a reason. He is out there because he has done something to really stand out to the coaching staff. So that to me stands out, folks. I mean, I think if the coaching staff wants these two guys out there, there you go. Now, the last thing I will always say, you never know. Like we talk about how Chase Bisontis has kind of been taking some snaps at one of the tackle spots, and that's because Reuben Fothery is fighting back from an injury. He's going to be good to go, it sounds like, but they're kind of easing him back in. So we don't know what's going on. Maybe Tony Grimes has had the flu this week. I mean, you don't know. Like there could be stuff going on that we just don't know about that leads to these guys kind of taking those roles. So what my point in bringing that up is basically to say fall camp, what happens over these next couple of weeks isn't end all be all. I mean, this is an open competition. These people are fighting for starting spots, fighting for their roles on this team. And at the end of the day, what we see right now, the guys that we have listed as the 11 starters right now, I'm willing to bet there is one or two surprises when the Aggies prepare to start their season against New Mexico. I mean, you are not going to – what happens right now, I don't think is the end-all be-all. I think we're going to see some more surprises, some more shocks. So I'm not, I'm taking this, and it's fun. It's fun. This is football. We get to talk about football. I've been excited to, we don't have to talk about lists and preseason stuff. I mean, this is football. We're seeing it on the field, and that's exciting. But I do think that I don't think this is all done. I think you're going to see some guys kind of come in and compete for some spots. I think you're going to see some changes. So don't count out Sam McCall and Tony Grimes yet, but the last thing I'll say before we move on to our next unexpected starter is, frankly, if Javon Thomas has worked his way into mixing in as a starter, same with DeBerry, that means that he's been exceptional. That means he's been great. So that should be exciting. We shouldn't look at that as like a negative, as, oh, Tony Grimes hasn't been playing well, Sam McCall hasn't been playing well, because that's not what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing is these guys have just been incredible. That's something to be excited about, folks. So this cornerback room it's going to work itself out. And however it works itself out, you're going to have blue chip talent out there stopping the opposing air attack of opposing teams. So either way, I think it's going to work out, folks. But that was an interesting battle. And I'm really excited to kind of talk more about that as we see stuff play out over these next few weeks before the season starts. We are officially, folks, it is August 8th. That means we are literally less than a month away from college football. I mean, it doesn't I have to flick myself to make it feel real. I mean, it's something crazy. Next position battle that was a little bit surprising is Mark Nabou, who is currently mixing in reps with Cam Dewberry. That, to me, was a little bit surprising. I've talked about the offensive line being Trey Zune, Reuben Fothery, Bryce Foster, Layden Robinson, and then, of course, Cam Dewberry. What we've seen is Mark Nabou is kind of mixing in snaps at the one. Now, he isn't flat out overtaking the snaps at the ones. He's mixing in and out with Cam Dewberry. But I wasn't expecting that. The one thing I will say that's exciting about this, we talked a little bit yesterday about the Aggies landing Joshua Moses, the first commit of the 2025 class. I think, a little side note, Mark Nabou, you got to remember, he was a composite 3-star. He was ranked as the 500 best player in the 2022 class, okay? He was not this, not a blue chip guy, folks. But the conversation here is simple, and it's this. People can come in, offensive linemen, and this is what I love about it. Mark Nabou, 6'4", 325. What did we talk about Joshua Moses? 6'4", 320. Don't count out these players just because they're not blue chip recruits. I mean, I love talent. I love 5 stars. I love blue chip. I love 4 stars. I love all that. But at the end of the day, how often do we see players come in unranked? The walk-on turns into be the superstar, the 2-star, the 3-star. It happens a lot. So good for Mark Nabou he appeared in 2 games last year, but good for him for kind of working into this role and potentially fighting for a starting spot. Now, he's a guy, I think if you lose somebody to injury, if one of these guards isn't playing up to where they need to be playing, I think Mark Nabou is going to go in and take their spot. So good for him. I was a little bit surprised by that, folks. Like I said, the offensive line was one of the positions I was a little more confident in. But Mark Nabou, I don't love the thought of not having, we talked about this offensive line with Cam Dewberry as a part of it, has 75 career starts. You love that. You love that conversation. So Mark Nabou, like I said, not a ton of experience, only appeared in 2 games last year. But if this same thing I just talked about with the cornerback room, if the coaching staff likes Mark Nabou and thinks he needs to be taking snaps with the ones, there is a reason, and that's exciting. Okay. That means he has stood out. He has done something to stand out at practice, whether it be in the weight room, getting bigger, faster, stronger. So, folks, that's exciting. Joshua Moses is, of course, I think a great comparison there. That's why you be excited about these 3 stars. Don't look at it like, that's a 3-star. Who cares? We're starting off our class with a 3-star. You're starting off your class with a guy who could come in and be the next Mark Nabou and come in and fight for snaps his second year. This is cool stuff. So that's why I wrote down the Joshua Moses. Obviously, there's not any correlation there. I just thought that was an interesting little note due to the fact that we talked about him on yesterday's episode of Locked On Aggies. But the last thing we're talking about real quick, I don't want to get deep into this one, but is Jake Johnson taking snaps as the tight end 1. Will he be the guy? I had somebody comment and say that they aren't as big a fan of Donovan Green as I am, which I appreciate that. I love that. I love hearing other people's opinions on this stuff. So maybe I'm too high on Donovan Green. But at the end of the day, like many positions on this Texas A&M roster, you have a stable of tight ends that can come in and do the job. I think Theo's a dang good tight end. Jake Johnson, you got Jaden Platt, you got and then you got Donovan Green. When you got so many guys that can come in and play in this tight end room, but frankly, I was a little surprised that Donovan Green has not kind of been the guy. Haven't heard anything negative about him. I'm just saying, I think that it sounds like Jake Johnson, and people are talking. There's a little bit of Jake Johnson hype generating. So I think there's a chance that he could end up winning the job, but we'll have to see. Now, even if he does, you're still going to see some Donovan Green. You're still going to see some Max Wright. You're still going to see some guys floating in and out. But I think Jake Johnson has a real shot to win this tight end job. We'll just have to see how that plays out over the next few weeks. Folks, we have one of our last breakdowns to do here, and it is the LSU game. We're going to break that down. And you got to remember, folks, when we get into the season, I'm going to have guests on to kind of come and talk about the upcoming games, the upcoming matchups. So you're going to get an LSU insider on the show when we get to that matchup. But so that's going to be exciting. We're obviously a ways away from that. But let's break down a little bit of this LSU game, which I think is going to be a pivotal one on the Aggies 2023 schedule. We're going to talk about that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. LSU, folks, the Bayou Bengals. Fun game. You beat them last year in College Station. You take their lunch money in a game that was a big one for them. You beat them pretty soundly. I think that was a real kind of turnaround statement game for the season. I think it was a big win to kind of say, okay, this was rough. This season was rough, but this was a good way to call it quits. I do think that creates one issue. I think the Tigers of LSU are going to be hungry for this win. I mean, hungry to come and just beat you on their home field. So that's the big thing here, folks. I think bigger than even the matchups on the field. I'm a big believer in environments being a big deal, away environments. I don't know how everyone else stands there, but I'm a bit surprised that I'm a bit fearful of having to go play in Baton Rouge against the Bayou Bengals in that stadium. I mean, no thank you. They're loud. Which is what makes college football so fun, folks. I mean, I need to preface that. I love that these atmospheres. This is what makes the game we all love so fun. Fans rowdy and yelling and screaming and having a great time. But it's not easy. It is not easy for these athletes to go and play in an environment like this. It's not fun. It's not easy to go get peppered. Some players like it. Some opposing players like going into these environments and, hoping to shush the home crowd and stuff like that. But I don't love having to go play at their place, especially after you beat the brakes off them last year and really kind of, I wouldn't say derailed their season, but you hurt them a lot. They're going to want to beat you this year. There's going to be a chip on their shoulder in this ball game. But Jayden Daniels is back. Malik Nabors is back. They've got some talented offensive weapons. They bring back pretty much their whole offense. They bring back all 5 starters on the offensive line. And on the defense, there's only one name I wrote down because I think he could be the best player in college football. At least definitely one of the best defensive players in college football, and that is Harold Perkins. Offensive linemen are going to have to stop this guy. That is going to be the biggest key here. The running back room, I mean, it's fine. They got a transfer in that they returned a guy from last year. But at the end of the day, Jayden Daniels is the guy who I'm worried most about running the football for them. So you have to have somebody spying on him. But I'm worried about Harold Perkins. The offensive line has got to shut him down. You have to game plan that. You have to know that he is going to be trying to get after Connor Wigman, Max Johnson, whoever the quarterback is. They're going to be trying to get after him all game long. This is a massive game, folks. This is the game that I've talked about, the Bama game and the Tennessee game. Frankly, I think those games are more winnable than this game. And I think you're going to see you're going to see LSU preseason ranked above Alabama. I'm curious to see how that pans out. But I think Bama in Kyle Field is more winnable than LSU in Baton Rouge. I don't feel good about this game, folks. But at the end of the day, you beat this team last year. You did. You beat this football team. They return a lot of starters. I mean, they lost Kayshon Boutte. They lost a few players. But at the end of the day, they return a lot of production, and you beat that production last year. I think you can go win this football game. I don't feel great about it. I think this is the number one, if we were talking like handicap on the golf course, this is the number one handicapped hole on your schedule. This is the number one handicap. This is the hardest game on the schedule, folks. And I say that pretty confidently, but I do think that I think the Aggies can win it. There's not a game on this schedule that I just flat out don't think the Aggies can win. Are they going to go 12-0? No. I mean, you know what I mean? I'm not out here being delusional, but I think there's a world where not every one of these games you can win. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I would obviously pick the LSU to win this game. I don't think the Aggies are going to win this game, but I think they could. And that's what I'm getting at. It's not like a game where you go into it like, okay, write that down as a loss on the schedule. That's over. Don't even play it. Why are we even playing them? I don't look at this game like that. I think it's the hardest game on the schedule, and this is exciting. This is the hardest game on the schedule, and I think the Aggies still do have a shot to win. But, folks, that's a big one. I mean, that's a game where if you do have a magical season, there's a chance that game could be for the SEC West. I know I started my first ever show, I talked about that, and people were hounded me for that. But, folks, I mean, here's the deal. I think people are starting to buy into the sleeper hype of the Aggies, and if they're competing for the West, this game, final game of the season, of the regular season, is going to be one that it could be for the West, folks. I really do think there's a chance that pans out. So we'll have to see how that goes. But that's going to be a fun game. I'm excited about it. I think the Aggies could win it. I don't feel great about it. It's a big game on the schedule. You got to stop Jayden Daniels using his legs. You got to stop Malik Nabors, and you got to contain Harold Perkins on the offensive line. You got, as the Aggie offensive line, you got to stop Harold Perkins. Those are going to be the keys to that game. And we'll, of course, break that down more when we get closer to it. We are far, far away from that game. But, folks, we are close to football, and I am excited. That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and we will see you tomorrow.